city and the Boston Teachers Union have reached agreement on a new contract covering only the current school year and the previous year. The agreement leaves some issues to be resolved in future negotiations, but along with a raise for teachers, the contract has provisions that could affect student performance. Joining us as our guest is the new president of the Boston Teachers Union, Jessica Tang. Thank you very much for being with us, Jessica.
I'm glad to be here.
First of all, I know that this is unusual in Boston, having a shorter contract, and I guess there are risks for either party here. What's your take on this? Having this instead of the longer thing that a lot of people might have been expecting.
Sure. It's actually been done before, and it's 2 years instead of 3 years, which is more typical. Our last contract was 6 years, but that was also because we had several years pass, and the negotiations themselves took 2.5 years. And so this time around, we really wanted to start the school year off but being able to implement a lot of the agreements we had been able to come to over the last 18 months. So we were in negotiations for 18 months, and there were a number of issues that we were very close on or had agreements on, and we didn't want to continue the wage freeze, and we did want to implement, again, a lot of the positive policies that we were in agreement on, while also then finding some more time to work out some of the more complicated issues.
Talk about some of the things that could affect what goes on in the classroom, especially around social and emotional learning.
Yeah, so that was a big focus of the short contract, was supports for social emotional learning. We know that's a big issue. We've heard from our teachers, from families, and then also supporting special education students. And so some of the new initiatives that are in there include restorative practices. This is a way to...
Restorative, explain how that works.
Yeah, of course. So there's been a lot of study on the harm of the school to prison pipeline, or punitive measures like suspensions and expulsions that don't actually address the root issues of what might be causing behaviors that are impacting student learning. And so restorative practices is really about looking at the root causes of why students are acting a certain way and then addressing them. It's also about conflict resolution. It's about repairing harm. And it has shown to be a lot more inclusive and engaging in resolving issues as opposed to just having punitive consequences. And so a lot of the schools have been trying to implement this on their own. And so what we were able to do was create a citywide position to actually support schools that are trying to implement this, create 3 new positions in schools where they have coordinators to help implement the new program, I guess you could say, and then also have professional learning opportunities for the other schools that are already engaged in this.
Now, what I'm reading between the lines is that this has the potential to diffuse some of those tensions, let's say, between a disruptive student and a teacher, but this could also diffuse things between students themselves.
Exactly, yes. So it's bringing in, if 2 students have a conflict, then can they sit together and through a restorative process figure out, why, what the harm was caused by the student's behavior, and then how they can repair that relationship and repair the harm that was done. And again, find support. So, was it a reaction because a lot of our students do experience trauma or violence, and it wasn't actually about the student or the interaction, it's about something else, and do they and should they be getting support in other ways, or was it about communication? And a lot of social emotional learning is about how do you express your feelings in a way that's not disruptive or harmful, but actually helps you to get support for whatever it is that's really bothering you.
This has been our news. We're talking with the president of the Boston Teachers Union, Jessica Tang. Jessica, another feature here is I guess there will be more school nurses. Why is that so important?
Yeah, so I was just in a school the other day. We don't have a full-time nurse in every school, and that is our goal. And, the win in this is actually pretty small in that we're only able to get at least a half-time nurse in every school. And again, we need a full-time nurse in every school because we never know when a child is going to get hurt on the playground or when medical emergencies happen. And I was literally just in a school yesterday where the staff was talking about how they only have a half-time nurse, and when I was visiting the school, the nurse wasn't able to be there. But previously, there had 3 children who had fallen off of a play structure, and there was no nurse, and so they had to call 911 and wait half an hour for medics to arrive to help those students. And so while we continue to want to fight for a full-time nurse in every school, this was a step in the right direction that would preserve an small increase from the last contract of sub-coverage nurses, and then also add a couple nurses as well. But I have to say it's not sufficient, but it's a step in the right direction, as are many of the provisions of this contract. We were able to, for example, to increase the number of paraprofessionals. Oftentimes when they're sick or absent, the teacher is left alone and they really need that extra staffing support. So that's another example of a support for special education students.
One of the unresolved issues is actually a byproduct of the union giving way on hiring practices at the schools. And the result of that is you've got more teachers who find themselves without a permanent or regular assignment. Some observers on the outside are saying this is costing a lot of money that could be better spent otherwise. But how big a problem do you see this?
Well, it's interesting because I was actually talking to someone from another district, and they're like, what a wonderful problem to have that you have too many teachers, because we can't even get enough teachers in our district. And I have to remind folks too that the reason these teachers don't have permanent positions is not because they're not great teachers. They are all overwhelmingly proficient teachers. And exemplary teachers. They were former coaches, former new teacher developers, former department heads, coming back from maternity leave or leaves of absences because they were doing further study. And the schools need these teachers. And a lot of times the reasons they don't have permanent positions is because of budget cuts, or because of turnaround processes where they fired all the teachers, like at Brighton and Excel High School, regardless of the teacher's performance. So when they blanket lay off all these teachers, it actually included the Mass Teacher of the Year finalist, in this last round. And so these are excellent teachers, and they need to be placed in schools where they're needed, but they don't have permanent positions oftentimes because of budget cuts and funding constraints. And so they're social workers, they're guidance counselors, they're librarians, they're teachers who are needed as foreign language teachers, but oftentimes, again, their positions have been cut and they are needed in schools, and they've really been misrepresented in the media.
We should finally mention that you have an event coming up Saturday. This is for students and families?
Yeah, so we have our fourth annual Back to School Fair, and we give away 40,000 free books to students, and whenever they stop by, they can pick up I think it's 15 books, or at the end of the day, honestly, they take as many as they want. And we also have resources from community organizations and nonprofits. Over 30 of them will be there to provide resources to families. And it's also just a fun time, too. We have a DJ, we have a dance-off, we have line dancing. We also have live read-alouds from authors who are also giving away their books. And we are also raffling off a couple signed Matt Damon posters. You might have heard we recently had a event with Matt Damon on the prepare of Backpack Full of Cash about the privatization of public education. And so it's just a lot of fun activities and giveaways, but it's really also a celebration of literacy and the importance of reading and learning and having lots of books available. And also something else we want to hopefully have in the future is a librarian in every school too.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
From the Boston Teachers Union, Jessica Tang.